Okay, so let's go to some tips from Alzheimer's associations. There's some from the American one, and there's also one on the Canadian site. Both are excellent. There are lots of great things that you can learn from there. So let's go to this link, and this one is from the American Alzheimer's Association. Okay, this is the American Alzheimer's Association, and they have a section here under daily care, food and eating. There's all kinds of nutrition tips. There's meal times, making calm and comfortable, encouraging independence, and minimizing eating and nutritional problems. When you want to encourage that independence because it helps to prolong the person's activities of daily living, giving them that exercise. It's like exercise doing those independence. Keeps the brain working. So some basic nutrition tips, of course, are balanced diet. Right off the bat, lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, low fat, dairy products, lean meats. Those are lean proteins. Those are all general guidelines. You'll notice that these guidelines are very similar to the guidelines that are in the Canada's Food Guide. So limiting foods high in saturated fat and cholesterol, cutting down on refined sugars, limiting foods high in salt, and using less salt. These are all good for cardiovascular health, and we know that if you maintain cardiovascular health, you also help to maintain brain health. So as the disease progresses and there's a loss of appetite and weight loss might be a concern, in those cases we may need to use some type of a supplement. My preference is a high-protein milk. It's cheap. It's easy. Most people like it. You can add chocolate. You can add strawberry. It's very easy to get that in there. Even making sure that the milk gets out at the meal will really help somebody with dementia to decrease their wounds, to increase the protein that's going in there, to increase those nutrients that you don't get, like vitamin D and calcium, that can help with overall health. So a high protein milk is a cheap way to do it. You can also add things like a high protein cookie, or you can do a super cereal that is high protein, high energy. These are all things. Most times what happens in the later stages, especially with dementia, is that you end up with more malnutrition. And because of that, you're looking to get into more ways to hold that calorie up there. Staying hydrated, it's really hard to get somebody who doesn't really remember what they're doing to drink. And the thirst signals get turned off in this population, so you want to make sure that you're pushing that fluid. Now that fluid, best option is water, but even if you can't get water into them, let's say they forget how to drink but they remember how to eat, then you can do things like fruits and soups. Or you can provide the fluid by teaspoon, and if somebody won't open their mouth for a drink, sometimes they'll open their mouth for a spoon, sometimes the other way around. So it's one of those things that you can work with. Possible causes of poor appetite in this population would be not recognizing the food. They no longer recognize what's on their plate. Poor fitting dentures, that's very common because if they've lost weight, their dentures often don't fit, and it's very difficult to get them out if they're in the later stages of dementia, to get them out to a dentist. Medication, if there's changes in medication that's increasing sleepiness at the time of the meal, that's called somnolence. When that somnolence happens, you'll find that it's really hard to get them to eat. And it won't matter how much you push at them, it's still not going to work. So we want to make sure that we are providing some help. Not enough exercise. A lot of times people who live in long-term care, they have limited physical activity. Physio works with them, but just their abilities just aren't there. They might be in a wheelchair, they might not remember how to walk properly. Those are all different concerns. Decreased sense of smell and taste. We know that as you age, your sense of smell and taste decreases. So with dementia, it gets even worse because you may not know how to recognize smell and taste anymore. So how do we get across or around some of the some of the things that happen with meal times. We can limit distractions. If somebody is always playing with their apron, then don't give them an apron. If somebody doesn't know which fork to use, or spoon or utensil, then minimize. Give only one item, one drink, one thing on a plate, and a spoon or a fork to use, instead of giving them too many things that they have to think about. Keep that table setting very simple. Avoid patterns, because patterns can confuse somebody with dementia. Tablecloths and placemats might just confuse. Using color contrast like we were talking about earlier, maybe that yellow plate on the blue back tablecloth, that might help to bring their attention to the plate. Consider plastic tablecloths, napkins, aprons for easier cleanup. We don't do that in long-term care because we have a pleasurable dining experience, so usually you're not using plastic. You're going to use a real tablecloth. Distinguish foods that are on the plate. Sometimes you might use a divided plate. Sometimes that will help. Or again, the colored plate. Sometimes that will help. Or maybe they need a lidded cup and a straw because they don't remember how to pick the cup up and drink, but they will drink if there's a straw there. Again, avoiding patterns because that's visually distracting. Checking the temperature, because those with dementia don't always know if it's too hot or too cold. They don't really recognize that sometimes, so we want to make sure that we know what that temperature is. Offering one item at a time, that works very often. I have a lady who came in not too long ago. She sat down to the meal and you could see her trying to figure it out. There was so much in front of her she didn't know where to start. So we took the plate away, gave a little dessert plate, and just put one item at a time on that dessert plate, gave her a spoon or a fork or whatever it is she needed to do with, and she was much better. She could concentrate on that one item. She didn't have to try and figure it out. Eating with others, that can be good or it may not. Depends on if they're a ruby or a diamond. If they're a diamond, then yeah, eating with others is probably fine. If they're a ruby, you might need to minimize those distractions by having them eat in a quieter setting. Keep in mind that the person may not remember when he or she has eaten, so you'll come across these people who come up and you know they just had a meal, but they'll say, I haven't eaten yet, and there's no way you are going to convince them that they haven't eaten. They're a ruby. So we need to deal with that. So one of the ways that I usually suggest to deal with that is to give them one bite of something, and then when they come back, give them the next bite, and then when they come back, give them the next bite, or give them a drink. So you keep doing that until the meal is done, and that helps to manage it, and hopefully they get to the point where they're full and they're not asking for as much. And like I said, encouraging independence is really important. We want to make sure that that person is keeping those abilities for as long as they possibly can. So make the most of the person's ability. If they can't eat, but they can drink and they can hold a cup, then you let them drink and hold a cup. If they don't know how to put the food onto the spoon anymore, you can load the spoon but they can grab the spoon and take it to their mouth, then you load the spoon and let them take that to their mouth. So things like that can make a difference. Serving finger foods. So a lot of times what happens is there's something about the utensils they don't understand. A finger food will often work better. A hand-over-hand feeding, that's when you have the person holding the cup. This is especially beneficial if you are doing anything with dysphagia. A person will know how to drink much better if they have their hand on that cup and they are bringing that up to their mouth. They're preparing for that swallow. It's much easier to get them to swallow, but you may need to support that cup. So just having your hand just below or around to help support them moving towards the mouth, that can be helpful. It's okay if they're not perfectly neat. That's all right. Let the person feed themselves or herself as much as possible. Set aside the bowls and the plates on non-skid surfaces such as a cloth or a towel. We usually use red dots, which are basically red, and they're kind of a silicone. Great to go through the dishwasher. Or you can use those placemat, those kind of rubbery placemats that you can get from the dollar store. You can get them in a whole roll. A lot of places will use that because they will wash. Using cups and mugs with lids to prevent spilling, filling the glass only half full, giving a bendable straw, those types of things can help. Minimizing eating and nutrition problems, preparing the food so it's not too hard to chew, being alert for signs of choking, avoid choking hazards. This is especially beneficial with people who are overfilling their mouth. We can either switch them to a mince texture or puree depending on what's going on, or you can cut the food up fairly small. And things like bananas, sausages, hot dogs, anything that's round, I suggest slicing them the whole length of the hot dog and then slicing them sideways so they're smaller bits. You don't want full rounds because that's a higher choking risk. Addressing decreased appetite. We've got to find the underlying cause before you can actually decrease the appetite. The My Plate for older adults I haven't actually gone into, but that could be an interesting place to go look at. Swallowing problems for older adults can be also helpful from the American Speech, Language and Hearing Association. This resource is from the Canadian Alzheimer's Association or Society, and it's the one that has more about the different approaches for different types of dementia. So they have some great ideas on how to manage and work with different things that go on with dementia. So we're going to go over that in the next video.